It's that time of the year. Cold weather, snow, the existential dread of another year passing and your life going by as a mere speck of dust in the grand scheme of the universe. You know, the usual things. But if anything is certain in this world, it's that every year we'll have a lot of incredible video games released, and this year is no different. I love video games as much as the next person. I mean, look at all these videos on this channel and all the games I have on Steam. But one of my favorite genres is roguelites, and in the past 2 years, I've highlighted my top 10 roguelites of the year, so it's basically a tradition at this point. Let's talk about my 10 favorite roguelites of the year. Just remember, this is my list, and if I missed your favorite of the year, just yell at me in the comments. Just don't be mean. Please. Starting this list off is the least popular roguelite in terms of reviews, and I called it my sleeper pick of the Steam Next Fest in October, and it's WORMHOLE. It was released on October 31st, and this game is based off the classic Nokia phone game Snake, but with a retro arcade feel and roguelite elements. It has a couple modes with a standard mode and endless. You have a few different worm options to choose from with different starting abilities, and inside your run you gain more abilities to help your worm. Obviously your worm grows a lot bigger the further into a run you are, but it's incredibly easy to pick up, and you can tell this game is made with a lot of love. Everything just fits perfectly. Gameplay is smooth and creative. The graphics are very appealing and has a whole lot of different color palettes that you can choose from, and just the soundtrack is top tier. This is the most underrated roguelite of the year. At number 9, we have a game that was technically released in 2023, but only on the Apple Arcade, and it's TMNT Splintered Fate. It was released on the Switch on July 17th of 2024, and then on the PC on November 6th. With it releasing on console this year, I decided to add it to the list because it's genuinely a good time. Clearly, the game reminds you of Hades with its isometric combat, and yeah, it feels like it. You can play as one of the 4 Ninja Turtles, and each has their own starting inspiration, moveset, and special attack. You battle through 4 biomes, gaining upgrades and meta progression tokens. I have a lot to say with this game, and I actually did make a full video talking about it if you want to see more, but overall, this game does have a few problems with lack of enemy variety, boring meta progression, and a couple unfair difficulty enhancers for bosses. But the gameplay is very fun, and the variety in a run in terms of upgrades is fun. The voice acting is also top tier, and the story is not that bad. Now, it's not as good as something like Hades, but I did enjoy my time with this game in like the 20 hours or so I played, and I'd say it is the 9th best roguelite that I've played this year that did release this year. Rogue Waters is at number 8, and it's one of the more unique roguelites on this list because it's a turn-based tactics game. It was released September 30th, and you play as Captain Cutter, and you recruit specialty pirates to your crew who have their own movesets and skill tree. You battle through 3 acts of a story trying to gain revenge on your old Captain Blackbone. The roguelite elements are strong with upgrades because after every run you gain gold and glass. You use these to upgrade your ship, starting cannons, modules, and even your crew. The runs are really simple. You can do a run to just upgrade and not worry about the story, or go straight down the middle and only do the story. I do think this game lacks replayability once the story is done and you have everything upgraded, but the game itself is a lot of fun, and the tactics will really make you think at times for the optimal play. Before you even do tactics combat, you also have turn-based ship combat where you need to decide what you want to attack on your opponent's ship. Take out their crew, their modules, or their cannons. It's really up to you. I love a good tactics game, and this is a good tactics game. I will say it does take a little bit to get into because the first couple runs you have 0 upgrades and you just get demolished, but once you get it going, it's a lot of fun. If anything happened in 2024, it was the year of a lot of simple card and table games becoming roguelites. There's a few not on this list like Dice and Fold and Rack and Slay, which are very good games in their own regards, but they just slightly missed the mark to be in this top 10. But then there's Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, my 7th favorite roguelite of the year. It was released August 8th, and this is basically the card game Blackjack in a roguelite. If you don't know, I love Blackjack. It's my favorite card game to play. So becoming a roguelite was something I knew I was going to enjoy when it dropped, and I did enjoy it quite a bit. It does become a bit crazy towards the end game when you have all these crazy and wacky cards changing the game and your opponent is swapping with you like crazy, but it's a lot of fun. Every suit has their own benefits if you can score 21 of them, and the game has a lot of cards to really impact a run and have a lot of variety in a run besides just a simple game of blackjack. I will say this is a hard game and has a lot of RNG involved, which stands for random number generator. A lot of RNG equals a lot of luck is needed. But with that said, it's still a very solid experience, and once you figure out the game a little bit, it's very addictive and very easy to just jump in and play a run. Number 6 is Spiritfall, the first game on this list to sneak out of early access this year. It was released February 28th, and this game is kind of like a small combination of Dead Cells, Super Smash Bros, and a little bit of Hades. Yeah, it's weird, but in a good way. You have different starting weapons that all have their own unique moveset, and inside your run, you battle through multiple biomes, gaining upgrades in a Hades-esque style selection, gaining currencies for stores, and even occasionally having a platform fight for more upgrades and currencies. The gameplay is smooth and fluid and just feels nice. Almost every combo gives you satisfaction while juggling enemies, and the variety inside a run is very high with build potential. Even outside of a run has so much with multiple different skill trees that doesn't make you feel super overpowered. This is just straight up a great single player platform fighter. The next 5 games could all potentially be number 1, so it's safe to say that these next 5 were all incredibly hard for me to pick, but number 5 is Shogun Showdown. It launched out of early access on September 5th, and it's become one of my go-to Steam Deck games. Runs can take 30 minutes, and it's just so satisfying when you get this game going. This is another turn-based game with some deck-building elements. You have multiple characters to play as, granted you need to unlock them, but inside a run you go through a handful of worlds, and each world has a few levels filled with waves of enemies, and you just need to kill them. You get cards that act as your weapons, and they have a cooldown once you've used them. But the turns go very, very fast. There's a lot of strategy involved with this, as you need to plan out what the optimal time is to attack an enemy, while more waves could be spawning. After each level, you get a free upgrade on one of your cards, or you get to pick another free card. You also have shops after each biome, tons of potions, and just a lot of cards and relics to unlock in between runs. Me talking about this game isn't doing it justice. This could easily be one of the best roguelites ever for me once I get more hours into it. The pure dopamine that you get from just comboing and killing 4 enemies in a single turn by having all your cards placed perfectly, oh, this game is incredible. Coming in at number 4 is another game that left early access, and it's Ravenswatch. This game released September 26th, and the dev team behind this game also made Curse of the Dead Gods, which is another challenging roguelite, but clearly similar art style. In Ravenswatch, you play as one of 9 characters from beloved fairy tales and go through 3 chapters, each one capping at about 20 minutes and ending with a boss fight. In each chapter, you level up, gain new abilities for your character, and buff their starting abilities. Every biome is filled with unique challenging enemies, small side quests to do, and a lot of fun events to help keep your run engaging and to buff you. All the events typically involve fighting a lot of enemies, and the combat personally reminds me of a MOBA like League of Legends, with you relying on cooldowns a lot, but in a more roguelite fashion. Every character has a story connected to them that you find out more by leveling up, and genuinely, I wasn't even going to pick this game up when it got out of 1.0. I only played a few rounds in early access, but the runs are so engaging and fun. Every character is so unique and offers a different playstyle to master them. It's just a great time. I only won a couple runs and never even touched the difficulty enhancers, but I think this game is just incredibly well made, yet very challenging and so easy to sink a lot of time into. It also plays very, very well in co-op, I hear. I don't have any friends to play with, but trust me on that, I'm sure it's great. It wouldn't be a roguelite list without a Horde Survivor style game, and at number 3 is probably my favorite Horde Survivor that was released out of early access this year on September 24th, and it's Halls of Torment. I think this game does nearly everything perfect in this genre. It has a lot of playable characters to unlock, which turns it into a lot of different playstyles with different upgrades, has a lot of variety in items to buff you before a run and help decide what type of run you're going for. It only has 5 maps, but every map does hold a lot of secrets to find, which adds replayability, and it has a more unique difficulty enhancer with Agony. I love the way it works. If you play better and avoid taking a lot of damage, the run will get harder if you have it on. It does take a little bit to unlock, but the uniqueness to it is a lot of fun. Halls of Torment has so much with achievements, meta progression, which is pretty simple, but in a Horde Survivor, I don't mind the simplicity, variety in a run, and just so many right choices with development. It's a must-play Horde Survivor, and I'll always suggest it. Yep, Number 2 is Peglin, which people will say is an interesting choice, but it is another great game that left early access this year on August 27th. I fell in love with this game this year. It's another one that I love to play on my Steam Deck, and it's just so much fun to me. I will say the game does have some negatives with how much RNG is involved once you start playing on higher difficulties, but the gameplay is so addicting to me. You play as a little green goblin and throw an orb down a board in a pachinko fashion style, and the more pegs you hit, the more damage you do. It's simple, and every orb has its own powers, which will lead to a lot of variety in your run. The variety may not be as deep as other games on this list, but the simplicity of just throwing an orb and watching it do a lot of damage, it's something I just love. You can unlock 3 other characters that all have a different play style to them, and the difficulty enhancers will help keep you coming back to an extent. But like I said earlier, the higher you get with the difficulty enhancers, the more RNG is involved to actually win a run. But it's one of the easiest roguelites to just pick up and lose 3 hours to. Now, before we get to number 1, I always like to shout out a few games that released into early access this year that you should keep your eye on. First is Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. It's a horde survivor, but a more unique one that has you focusing more on resource collecting than just killing enemies. 4 playable characters, all with different start and buffs, tons of upgrades and difficulty enhancers. Another horde survivor that will be one of my favorites when it's all said and done. Next is Windblown. It's made by Motion Twin, the people who made Dead Cells, and this game is pretty freaking magical. You go through the vortex as one of many animals. They all have the same stats, so that's just cosmetic, but you battle through multiple biomes while collecting memories for new abilities and weapons, and gaining cogs for meta progression. Like Dead Cells, this game is incredibly hard, but incredibly fun. And it also has co-op if that's your jam. And of course we have Hades 2, the isometric god power and sequel to Hades. Of course I'm gonna mention this in an early access section. This game plays just as well as Hades and has just as much content as Hades, and it's only in early access. The core combat is still the same with a few new exceptions. The graphics are better, the voice acting and story is still top tier, and it's a game everyone will play when it's in 1.0. And listen, there's been so many early access gems this year, I'm just gonna quickly mention a few more before we get to number 1. I'm sorry, there's so many great games that came out this year. Drillcore is an incredible strategy game, lots of meta progression, and difficulty enhancers. Get it. Realm of Ink, isometric action game with graphics that remind me of Okami. Lots of different start and play styles, upgrades in a run, and tons of meta progression. Rogue Prince of Persia just had a giant overhaul with art style, but the gameplay is incredible, movement is great, and combat doesn't feel unfair. Another great Prince of Persia game that was released this year. And lastly, Dungeon Clawler. It recently released into early access, and it's a claw machine roguelike. You face enemies, pick your weapons to attack via a claw machine. It's charming as hell. And now, the number 1 roguelite of the year. Is Balatro. We knew this was coming. No matter what you think of this game, I hope you can agree it's the best roguelite this year. This will be one of the greatest roguelites ever made. It's a genre-defining game. The cultural impact this game has had on the world since it was released on February 20th is insane. It has close to 50,000 reviews on Steam, with it being overwhelmingly positive. It's peaked close to 40,000 players at once on Steam. It's the best-selling game on Apple and Google's Play Store. It's available everywhere and has had collaborations with the biggest games, not just roguelites. Balatro is a masterful game. The gameplay is so simple and addicting. Even if it did not absolutely blow up this year, it would still be my number 1 roguelite because I love it. I also enjoy poker as a whole, but Balatro makes it so simple. Planet cards to buff your hands, jokers to make every run so unique, multiple different start and decks to change the way you play, and incredible difficulty enhancers to keep the player coming back for the long term. This is one of the greatest roguelites ever made, and I love seeing a game like this blow up like it did. Balatro may be the best roguelite of the year, but every game on this list is special in their own way, and I highly suggest all of them. Sure, some of them have a few negatives here and there, but it's been another fantastic year for roguelites, and I cannot wait to see what this genre can do next. It just gets better every year. Thanks for taking the time to watch this top 10 roguelites of the year video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite roguelites have been so I can see the ones that I potentially have missed. And yeah, that's all. I'll see you next time.